I had had enough.
Well, you drove out there into the middle of nowhere and had some sort of loud verbal display challenging ET in general out in the middle of nowhere?
That's what I was doing. I actually had a pistol in my hand at the time. I was really ticked off. When I was having this fit, I was waving the gun in the air, okay, and I had this fit. And at this moment, I said, okay.
He was a Louisiana man named Montaldo. Folks around called him Six Gun Joe. Worked with ICAR, don't you know? Investigating UFOs. Out for a drive with a gal one night, they stopped to check out the reporting site. When an alien lit right there on the ground, he commenced to throwing his weight around. Now, old Six Gun didn't take too kindly to that kind of thing, especially without Vaseline or anything like that, Seriously. Well, Six Gun looked that critter right in the eye and said, "Any last wish before you die?" Yo, reached for his gun, quick as a twitch, and said, "Fill your claw, you son of a bitch." Now a legend spread across the land about this pistol-waving man. But if you're from space or from Earth below, you don't give no lip to Six Gun Joe.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network. Welcome to UFO Undercover, with your host, Joe Montaldo. Welcome to UFO Undercover, with your host, Joe Montaldo.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of UFO Undercover. I hope everybody's enjoying their beautiful day today, wherever you may be. I know for some of us it's raining. For here down in New Orleans, it is actually cloudy, gloomy, foggy, and misty, I guess would be the best way, and about 48 degrees, somewhere around there. It's just generally nasty. It's the easiest way I can say that. But really, I hope everybody's enjoying. I know right now, I checked this morning, we had gotten our new stats in from the first of the year. We're going out to 93 countries around the world and 288 American cities. So, hello, everybody. I hope y'all are enjoying the show. And tonight's guest is going to be Larry Joseph. I have him on the phone with me right now. Larry, how you doing, man?
Well, it's raining here too in Southern California, and like I mentioned, rain here is a breach of contract.
You know, it's like I said before we came on. I was stationed in San Diego. It never rained the whole time I was there. I mean, I think we went like 4 months, 5 months without seeing a drop of rain, and I was like, "What the hell?" Because I've never been anywhere it didn't rain like that. Because everywhere in the South it pretty much rains all the time. Larry, let me get you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, kind of familiarize them with them, and we'll start from there. So
Sure enough, I'm the author of Apocalypse 2012, an investigation into civilization's end, which looks at the Mayan prophecy, ancient Mayan prophecy, that the year 2012 would somehow be the end of one era and the beginning of another. And more generally, I've been a freelance science writer for 25 years, written a lot for the New York Times, written several other books. I've also served as chairman of a small plasma physics company headquartered in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it's actually from there that I first learned about the scientific aspect of 2012, basically which will be the year of the next solar climax, and the next time when the storms on the sun are at the greatest strength.
You know, it's interesting because I just last night or actually night before, I was sitting down around watching TV, and they came on with all the different prophecies leading to 2012 besides the Mayans. But at least they did leave. They tried to leave the Bible out of it, and they tried to leave Notre Dame out of it because they seem to be a little bit further in our future. But in your personal opinion, and with the research you've done, 2012. See, I've always had a problem with 2012, not so much because I didn't think something was going to happen. It's just the Mayans say the end of life as we know it and the start of the Golden Age. So it's hard for me to wrap my mind around a total catastrophe that's going to, trigger a Golden Age. But that's why I wanted to ask you what's your take on it.
Well, the simplest way to put it is that it'll be the birth of a new era, and like any other birth, it'll be accompanied by blood and pain. But the outcome, depending on the time scale, is they certainly believe to be positive. And see, I have my trouble with that too, because I wouldn't say I'm one of the more enlightened individuals. Mm-hmm. I would rather keep my cushy, cozy life, benighted though it may be, than I wouldn't trade it for a shot at enlightenment ever. I may not be a good person to ask about the good outcome, and really the question is time scales. I mean, are we talking a couple months of turmoil, a couple of years, or a couple thousand years?
Yeah, and that's the key question. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because when we're discussing this, and believe me, this is discussed a lot amongst the groups I work with, that's the thing. Is this going to be something, okay, let's say we start getting these solar climaxes in 2011 and they carry through 2012, cause some major damage to the planet, maybe some radiation spillover, maybe definitely some magnetic problems, probably kill a good chunk of the electronics. But is that going to be just it? I mean, is that going to be it, and that's what's going to make everybody pull together, or is this going to be a cycle that contaminates the planet for 5,000 years? And then the Golden Age, that's what scares me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, I understand the Golden Age thing, and the way the Mayans, if you take the Mayans literally, it sounds like it's going to flip. 1 minute it's going to be this, and then the next minute it's going to be that. But see, the problem is what is their minute? Is it a day, a year, a month, a millennium? And I can't find any evidence, because I guess they never went any further than that.
Well, yeah, not. Some have, but the ancients didn't, and the contemporaries don't necessarily acknowledge it. I think I mentioned to you that I wanted to confirm, first of all, that the ancient Mayan prophecy is what people say it is. Mm-hmm. So I went down to Guatemala and worked with some Mayan shamans who themselves had spent 20 years going around the former Mayan kingdom and talking to elders and sages who'd been carrying on the wisdom. And if nothing else, they confirmed that there is a 2012 prophecy, that it is believed to be the end of time or the beginning of time, on December 21st, 2012. They can't quite decide what the definition is, but they know they believe that something's coming. I think that the more philosophical you get, the happier you can. None of the folks who I met or whose work I had related to me would be optimistic that in their own lifetime, or perhaps even in the lifetime of anyone who's alive today, that the era of enlightenment would manifest itself. It might retrospectively have been seen to start in the midst of darkness, but that's cold comfort to those who are going through the hard part and perhaps perish in it, either as a result of it or just because for other reasons, but never see anything but that at the end of their life. And if you look at the geological timescales, or even a couple thousand years is a sneeze.
Yeah.
A couple thousand years either way in human civilization. I mean, a couple thousand years ago, it was pre-chariot days. It was, it was when wild animal attacks were a major concern. So, I certainly can't take personal comfort in what I anticipate to be the timescales of the disaster of 2012.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, because it's just because any way you look at this now, Larry. But is this going to be something that starts slow? let's say 2012 gets here and things start to happen, but is it going to be just a rapid, like a rapid change, or progressively getting worse for maybe a couple of decades before it starts to swing the other way?
My sense of it, and this is now you're asking for my opinion as opposed to the facts that I've been able to gather. My opinion is, my greatest fear is the domino effect, and that's where one thing happens, a natural catastrophe that leads to collapse of governments, which leads to war, which leads to a global movement of something that's not necessarily helpful or helpful. I certainly think we will feel the beginning of it before 2012. And there are those who argue we've already moved into this phase, and I won't disagree with them necessarily. But while things are tense and edgy right now, I don't see global civilization careening out of control. I do see the signs where it could, but if this is what they've been talking about, I'll take it with a thank you, ma'am. This we can handle. But the one study that really opened my eyes was actually a historical study where in the Little Ice Age, a couple centuries ago, sunspots went flatline. It was the opposite of what we're seeing today. There were almost no sunspots. And there was a drought, famine, cannibalism. This is all in China. Collapse of the Manchu Empire, and chaos for a good long while. And what struck me about that was the way that a natural catastrophe tipped the balance and led to so many other really unfortunate things. And it's like I said, it's the domino effect, and I think that could happen rather quickly.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up about the spots, because NASA's got this thing out. They've got us leaving the present, there's a cycle that started that ends in 2012, and it peaks out and ends. The next one after that is actually supposed to be almost as dead as the one in, was it 18 or 1668? I forgot it. The one that started the freeze in Europe.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna have one extreme in 2012, and then in 2019, or no, it's an 11-year cycle. So 2022, you're gonna have the other extreme.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of wonder what's going on in between in those 11 years. I don't know, Larry. It's not looking good.
No, and I know the astronomer who's been pushing that, Don Hathaway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting situation. It makes a certain Gaian sense. Gaian meaning a self-adjusting, self-regulating sensibility. And okay, so the sun goes nuts for a cycle or two, as it has been, and now peaks out in 2012, and then okay, calms down. I mean, in the course of things, the sun. The sun could look back at itself if it had such consciousness, and say, okay, it's just a high and a low, as we all go through periods of intense activity, and then sit around and watch TV. It's similar for the sun, and the question is, so one doesn't even need to say that the sun is moving into some horrible new condition. It just happens to be going through a normal up and then down cycle. But the question is, what does that mean for us?
Yeah. Because
we apparently, meaning human civilization as we know and understand it, which extends back, let's say since the end of the last ice age, 11,000 years ago, we haven't seen that. And it could well, in retrospect, be part of our evolutionary development and the challenges we face and what we overcome. Blah, blah, blah. Good, positive way to look at it. I just wish it were coming now. When I got kids that I'm trying to get to soccer. And
that's the thing. I got kids. I got grandkids. I even got a great grandkid, and I'm not even that old yet. So.
Wow.
And we were talking about that the other day. Because my son was in here. He's 22. Matter of fact, last night before I left to go to Mississippi, he was in here talking to me about the 2012 prophecy, because he's like, well, Dad, I'm only going to be like 26, man. I was thinking, I know, dude, but at least you'll be young enough to
Yeah.
kind of deal with what's coming on. I said, I'm going to be closer to 50. It's going to be a lot harder on me.
Yeah.
But you see, but that's another thing. This reason we talk about this so much is, we're trying to get people to understand that, yeah, there is a possibility that something's going to happen. I'm not saying conclusively by any means, but there seems to be a pretty good possibility something's going to happen. So prepare yourself for it, but then how do you prepare yourself for something you don't exactly know what it's going to do?
Well, that's a good question. That's my next book is what should we do? And there's all sorts of things to do. I mean, you want to get into that?
No, I'll tell you what. Yeah, let's go. Because one of the things that were brought up just recently, they got those silos for sale all across the middle of the United States.
Yeah.
Those old abandoned. And somebody was asking me the other day, do I think that would be a good place for 2012? I said, well, I'll tell you what. Larry's going to be on the show Wednesday. Come listen. We'll talk about it and we'll see. Because we know they're partially shielded for radiation. We know they have their own ventilation systems, their own water systems. So I guess if you could afford one, it might be an ideal place. What do you think?
Well, if your strategy is to take refuge, and that's certainly one strategy, choosing a silo, particularly in an area that was not geologically prone or active, and also wasn't, for example, next to a nuclear weapons base.
Oh, yeah, that's another big one.
That's one way to go. And I'm not going to discourage anybody from doing that, but that's not the thrust of what I'm saying. I'm saying we got to work together.
Oh, I agree.
There's a lot of things we can do to mitigate whatever's coming and to rise to the challenge. It's everything from the personal level of preparedness, both spiritual and just make sure that you got the jugs of water and the flashlights and the escape route and all that, to making damn sure, that the government, for which we pay trillions of dollars, has plans and it has the means to carry out those plans and is willing to confront this possibility. And one of the things that I get this question a lot, and they say, well, don't you think, Larry, that if you could find out this information, that the powers that be know what you do and a lot more? And I'd say, that's likely quite right. But it's not a question. It's not their information, but their judgment. I question, and that's where we've got to help them along.
Because I think the government believes in saving, minor numbers, not major numbers.
Yeah.
In other words, they don't have any. And there's 300 million Americans. They may be planned on saving 2 million, 3 million, 10% of the population, probably no more than that. And then, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, you're going to have to know someone to get into one of these shelters, someone with some power somewhere, or have a very high security clearance, one or the other, but you're not going to get in any other way. They're not going to just let you walk in off the street and say, hey, let me and my kids come in your shelter. They're not going to do that. Living through Katrina and dealing with FEMA, they are not set up for a disaster like what Larry and I are talking about here. This is a much larger disaster. It makes Katrina look like a walk in a park. So, I agree. I mean, there's got to be some way to put pressure on the government, but without, I know you've worked on this scientifically, and I have heard one or two other people, but I haven't seen anybody, you've got the book out, but no one's really trying to challenge the government. I guess there's not enough of us yet. Is probably what the problem is.
Yeah. Also, I think it's always a question of this current regime is preoccupied with something else entirely.
Kyle Bush, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I just don't. As I think I mentioned to you, Joe, if this were the era of Franklin Roosevelt, a Democrat, or Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, I would have a lot more faith that they would take care of business, that they would discharge their duties, that they would understand that their mission was primarily to take care of the people, and that, well, I wouldn't expect them to do it perfectly. I would have a lot of trust. I just don't now, and don't see any reason to trust in whoever comes next. Well, hey, we don't know who comes next.
Well, because nobody I see that's coming next, I would trust. I have to be honest about that.
Yeah, you got to give whoever wins a chance, give them the benefit of the doubt, and that's fine. But that's down the line, and that's plenty hazy. So, unless I'm proved pleasantly wrong, we have to press this case. In fact, one of the things I want to do for my couple of opinion poll questions. You can buy these omnibus poll questions, get national surveys about catastrophe preparedness and the major candidates, and just see what the public thinks about who's capable of doing what, and with regard to 2012 and just in general. And that way, at least we can get a gauge. I'll probably wait until the nominees are decided, and we can get a gauge on what the public thinks of the candidates, and maybe match that up to their policies, and then introduce 2012 into the debate. That's my little plan anyway.
That might work. I noticed several of the candidates got hit with UFO questions this year. So
interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I think there's been three or four questions asked, and for some reason in 2007 and even in 2000, starting in 2008, CNN and some of the more major news medias have been really getting into the subject matter, which is a big switch from just in 2006. You couldn't even get them to say hi to you.
Wow.
Yeah, they've had Stephen Bessa on CNN 3 times. I think they've had Stanton Friedman on 3 or 4 times. And they just, all this Stevensville sighting in Texas, they've been blaring all over CNN for a week now.
Good.
And which is not something, but that's hopeful with the subject matter we're talking about, because they're going to lump that right into, unfortunately, 2012 is going to get lumped in with UFOs and paranormal. They're just going to drop it in there because it's a prophecy, which isn't a correct thing to do, but
that's where you start, and then you just keep working. That's a lot better than nothing.
Oh yeah,
as far as I'm concerned. I noticed that United States Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, was asked about 2012 and had a very constructive response. And he said that, 2012, whether something major happens then or not, let's assume that it might, and let it provide the rationale for jobs and for preparations that we're going to need one way or another anyway.
Well, and that's what they should be doing.
Yeah, I know that was. It's funny, the validation I've gotten from my book, ironic funny, has come from the extreme left. Bernie Sanders is essentially a socialist who caucuses with the Democrats, and the extreme right. Tim LaHaye, the author of the Left Behind series, who's fundamentalist Christian minister, and makes no bones about it. The tenacity of his beliefs. Wrote me the nicest blurb I've ever gotten. So I'm getting the sense, which I'm happy, it's not a political issue in the sense it's not one, it doesn't mean you're a liberal, doesn't mean you're conservative. And two, if it starts creeping into both sides from the mainstream, they might meet in the middle before we know it.
Yeah, well, actually, it might. If you're getting far right, far left, somewhere it's going to get compressed together.
Yeah.
I had, yes, I see y'all's hands. I'm going to take some questions in a little while, guys. I'm sorry, I was reading text while I was talking to you. And because I got the virtual auditorium. They're like, we're going to I promise y'all, probably about 10, 15 minutes, guys, we'll open up the lines for questions. Y'all can ask Larry whatever y'all want. I was thinking, Larry, so if we could get this more, I guess the trick is to get this more into the press. But I was thinking about this the other day. I know Coast to Coast talks about 2012 a lot, and Jerry Pittman and Kevin Smith and them, and we do ourselves here on the Paranormal Radio Network. It's a topic line that's been carried across all of the different programming we have. So it's getting a lot of press. I guess there's just no way to know if the government is doing anything about it. I know FEMA has a ton of underground facilities and stockpiles of this all over the country, but what is that for? And let me ask you this before we even talk about that. Let me ask you this: what do you think from doing research? What do you think is going to happen? We're looking at solar flare activity to kick this off, but is this going to be something damaging the planet, or is this going to be something that does so much damage to the electronics world that, say, like China or Russia decides to take advantage of the United States' electrical problems, to say?
Yeah, that's what I see. Again, it's the domino effect. The first line of vulnerability is the satellite network, particularly with the apparent weakening of the Earth's magnetic field, which has been at the very least an unfortunate coincidence. Just as the sun reaches the height of its power and nastiness, our protective magnetic shield, which is supposed to protect us from incoming blasts of solar radiation, starts to go wonky. As many people have said, there may be a pole shift underway. I don't know that the pole shift is imminent, but even if the process has started and takes several thousand years, that represents a weakening of the system as the poles move, and just in general, there's cracks that open up and holes and, you know, all sorts of vulnerabilities. So that really lays the satellites, particularly the non-military satellites, but also some of those, in harm's way. And, you know, all you need is a couple of key satellite sectors to go down. And again, you know, we depend on telecommunications, banking, military security, law enforcement, you name it. Depends on satellites. You could have a situation where if the system is damaged sufficiently that some bad group or nation, or even worse, some well-meaning but ultimately dangerous and injurious group tries to seize power and take control. And I mean, China did test that anti-satellite satellite. I guess it was probably a year ago now. And it made headlines for a little while, but that was pure muscle flexing, because that they showed they know where the vulnerability lies. So I would keep an eye on those activities.
Well, the satellite, well, I know, what was it, in 1992, somewhere around there, we had lost some satellites and part of a power grid in the northern part of the United States and Canada.
89, Hydro-Quebec, yeah.
I know it was somewhere right around there,
Yeah.
and that was due, and, you know, that wasn't, that's not even near the magnitude of what they're talking about coming here in 2011 and 2012.
No.
And some of the scientists said, you know, and I've listened to several people talk about this, they said we have anywhere possibilities from just minor electronics problems to anything to radiation contamination of the planet to even some of the flares could actually physically reach the planet and lap them, which, you know, anything they touched, they would pretty much disintegrate.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I mean, you have a minor end to this, and then you have a very major end to this, and I didn't really realize that flares could extend out from the sun that far. I mean, not physically. And I had read a report on some recent findings on Mars that suggest sometime about 80 million years ago they actually reached to Mars.
That is a reach.
So, you know, I'm thinking, whoa, wait a minute now, what kind of, you know, I mean, is it just like extending from the sun, or is it just shooting the whole flare out and it's breaking off and just traveling out intact still?
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of wondering about that, but I haven't seen anything on that. But those are some pretty wicked scenarios. And being that Earth is so close to the sun, you know, everybody says 93 million miles. It dies in space. That's like across the street.
It is. And, you know, just to follow up on what you're saying, the week of September 5th through 12th, 2005, which I know I talked about last time I was on the show, which was the second stormiest period ever recorded on the sun, and also happened to come right after Katrina and before Rita and Wilma, which that coincidence launched me into a lot of investigating for this book, investigating the relationship between storms on the sun and storms on the earth. But what I'm, in addition to that, a couple weeks, I think it was about 3 weeks afterwards, there was a solar prominence, which is like a limb that comes out of the sun. That was the longest limb that either had ever been recorded or one of the top few. There was a question of how exact, but it reached into space millions of miles. And you know, what you're talking about now is exactly what happened then, but, you know, slightly but longer. But the question is, okay, let's say it reached out 5 million miles. I don't remember the number, and please don't, you know, hold me to that. But what were the next 5 million miles like out? I mean, you know, were they just intense bursts of radiation? I mean, you wouldn't want to come close to that thing, even if it didn't physically touch you in any sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would figure triple the distance of the arm itself. So if it was 5 million, I'd figure I wouldn't get any closer to 20 million miles to the thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're talking about. If you get a flare burst that, say, reaches the inner orbit of Venus, well, you're pretty much bathing Earth in radiation.
Yep.
You People don't understand. I mean, it's hard to make them understand that, they think the sun is just way, way, way far away from Earth, and it's not. They don't even understand that in 3.5 billion years, it's going to go red giant and engulf our planet.
Well,
we're going to become part of the sun. Well, we won't be. There'll be a little crisp charred, rock floating around in there, but
yeah.
But it's hard to make people understand this, and that they don't understand that there is a real danger here. We all look at the sun for life giving, keep us alive, keep us healthy, make us happy, which is what it does. But it's like anything else; it has its dangerous side to it.
One of the things I always like to say is the sun is only 8.5 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's what it is, 8.5 minutes, guys. So anything traveling at light speed is going to get here in that time. So if you get a burst, you don't get much warning.
right.
Couple of minutes that they might be able to give you 3-4 minutes more. I don't know if that's going to help you or not. What's interesting about this, Larry, is I do contact abduction research and stuff, and for about 15 years we've been having these we call them Holocaust rings, and
Call them what? I'm sorry.
Holocaust rings. A full 1/3 of everybody we interview that checks out has these dreams, and these dreams are pretty much identical.
Really?
It's a very strange thing. You can't really get a date per se, but since they're having them and they're seeing themselves in them, it has to be within their lifespan, I would assume. I could be wrong here, okay, but I would assume. The ones that live in the United States have described some pretty man, I'm losing my brain here today, but some pretty big disasters as far as, death of populations and stuff like that. What's funny is the people in Europe or in Australia or in China and Russia are pretty much saying the same things. They're seeing the same thing. Now, what I couldn't tell is a lot of the cities these people described did not see any physical damage, but they seen a lot of death. So I don't know if it could have been radiation, it could have been a virus, it could have been anything, but they said there wasn't so much like bombs were blowing up buildings, but, you'd go into a city and it would be like a ghost town. Or some of them had described several of them described like big dumpsters pushing people into piles, into mass graves and stuff.
Reminds me of the Carter days and the argument for the neutron bomb.
Yeah. Well, now they're trying to come up with something different there. I always want to call it a neutrino bomb. That's not the proper way of saying it. But they got a bomb they're working on right now. It doesn't kill plants. It doesn't destroy electronics. It only kills flesh and blood. Nothing else.
Yeah.
And there's no contamination. So you burst the bomb, and they say it's going to have like an 18-mile burst range. It kills everything that's flesh, and then you just roll your people in and take over. And the neutron bomb, they've got it down to a half-life of like 18 months now or something.
Really?
So they can burst it over a city and roll in 18 months and not have to worry about any contamination at all. That's crazy. I don't even know we need weapons like that.
Yeah.
Wow, that scares me. And then like George Bush working on his 200 megaton nuke. I'm like, what the hell do we need that? That's like enough to blow up half of Russia.
Yeah, really.
These are weapons I think are more for fear tactics than they are for anything else. The fear that we may use them on somebody.
Let's hope.
That's what I'm hoping for. But I have watched, and I don't know if you've noticed this or not. We've talked about this, and this is probably directly related to this topic line. If y'all have been paying attention, the United States has been taking a proactive attitude as far as we're building missile defense systems. We're building long-range weapons that do not need people on board. Matter of fact, George Bush has got this new little plane they invented. It's 500 pounds. It's completely remote control. You can put a nuke on it. You can put surveillance equipment on it. It does about Mach 2. They can be mass produced 1,000 at a time.
Really?
Yeah, and you can just fly these things anywhere you want to. So we're building those. The M1A1, they've actually got a remote control model of it now, and one of the fighter planes, they've actually got a remote on now. And then we've got all the other little ones. But the U.S. has taken a stance, and then they're building weapons for occupation, like neutron and neutrino bombs. Those are occupying weapons. That's a weapon where you're going to kill everything in the city, and then you're planning on reoccupying that city. And you got to kind of wonder about all of this. I mean, we're trying to make it to where no one can attack us, but we can physically attack anyone on the planet without threat of retaliation. And those kind of things scare me, Larry.
Yeah.
Those kind of things scare me. Lasers, missile defense systems, and you got to kind of wonder. I know what they're saying it's for protection, but a lot of this stuff is way overkill.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of wonder. And then I heard recently that they're going to start letting us rework biological and chemical weapons again.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on here, but we're taking a much more aggressive stance where we used to be a more passive nation. We're actually aggressive like China and Russia are aggressive.
We're more aggressive than China.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with that. I really think so. I think if you had to pick the aggressive nation on the planet right now, I'd have to point to the United States.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Not, people ask me, oh, it's because of Iraq and Afghanistan. It's not because of that per se. It's more of the attitude we have taken towards everybody else.
Yeah.
If you don't like it too damn bad, that's not conducive to,
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. What do you think about one world government? Because this is something, I mean, if we're going to talk about the golden age, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years from now, we're basically saying one world government is what we're talking about.
Okay, I'll tell you my concern about it, and because I've read about it, I don't pretend to any expertise about it, but here's where I get worried, and this is the whole other side of 2012. 2012 has entered the zeitgeist. It is. There are enough people who have an expectation that it may be a tumultuous year, and that number is growing rapidly, exponentially, that some bad group, be they terrorists, one world oligarchs, or both working in concert in some twisted way, may seize upon 2012, therefore, as a pretext for violence and destruction and conquest. I mean, since people are expecting 2012 anyway, they could cloak their actions as something that occurred because of 2012, or they could rally people to that cause. It scares me, because the better I do my job, in a certain sense, the better I do my job of spreading awareness about the possibilities of 2012, the more inadvertently I play into the hands of potentially of these, bad guys.
Yeah.
And I'm really worried about that. I mean, it's not just me. If the fear were, if Larry doesn't do it, then 2012 won't be that well known. Fine. I have not even a modicum of power in this whole crazy world, but I know Hollywood is drawing a bead on 2012. There's major films coming out from Warner Brothers and Paramount. There's the number of websites and books is just multiplying all the time. It's growing fast, and I don't want it to be seized upon as this excuse, by clever, well-funded, very calculating, callous people such as those who I think might, decide to appoint them the heads of the one world government.
And that's another thing. Who's going to run this one world government? Somebody was telling me about the World Bank a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, well, that's the start of one world government. I said, I don't know if I would call it the start of one world government. Maybe the start of let's try to get control of all the money in the world, but otherwise than that, I don't know. Somebody asked me the other day, and I asked this to a lot of people, is it possible in the current structure of our planet for a one world government? I always have to say no. Because I don't see Americans sitting back and letting 1.3 billion Chinese or 1.2 billion Indians elect the next leader of the world. I fundamentally think Americans will have a problem with that. Not just us. I think Russians will, and Brits will, and Australians will as well. So,
sure.
I don't know how we're going to ever achieve this one world government. How is there going to be an equality in this when some societies so far outnumber other ones? So I don't know what they're going to do there. Now, of course, if there's a big disaster and 600 billion Chinese and Indians die, well, then of course that levels the playing field a lot more. I just hate to have to see an enlightened planet come through death, but if that's what it takes, that's what it's going to take, I guess. Somewhere along the line, we got to grow up, Larry. I mean, we can't keep where we're going, because sooner or later we're just going to blow ourselves up anyway.
There's a sense of that, and in a way, I'm really, it gives me new respect for the diplomats who kept the Second World War from going into a third, and Third World War, which is nuclear. I mean, I think we did grow up some, and there was some awfully good work done. The fact that Russia and the United States did not come to blows with their brand new sets of nukes which could have really destroyed each other. I mean, there's a lot of pride to take in that and a lot of hope. But we can't rest on our laurels.
Yeah. Well, and there's one thing I think that helps China, the United States, and Russia keep from getting into a nuclear war is the fact that you can't nuke one without effectively nuking yourself.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you nuke Russia, it's gonna fall out on the United States, and China's almost directly sharing the same trade winds as us. So if China was to nuke us, well, we export 60% of their grain. Well, 60% of their grain they import from the United States. So I mean, they just killed their own food source and contaminated their own country because the wind's just going to fall out across the ocean and land right back on them. So really, there's no real way of people always talk tactical nuclear strike. I said not in the northern hemisphere. There's no real way of doing that. Maybe a very low yield nuke, but otherwise than that, I don't even see how you can do it.
No, the only way I'd see it is an exchange between China and Russia.
Yeah.
Because I always felt that China wants Siberia. And Russia can't really hang on to it. I mean, Siberia's as big as the continental United States, has 8 million people.
Yeah.
China could use the land space, the minerals, and they've got the population to put in there. That's something I keep an eye on.
And plus now they found out oil up there in Siberia.
Yeah.
Which of course is helping the Russian economy, but I don't know. I don't feel that Russia's the threat it used to be, and now that they're closer to a democracy than a communism country, I don't know if they'll ever be the threat that they were. I know they got with China, and they all buddied up with China, but there's so much hatred between the two countries. That's something that'll never last. Sooner or later, China or Russia is going to take advantage of it.
I think so.
And you're right. I agree. I mean, any way it goes, and this is what people don't understand about China. China's a little country with a lot of people.
Yeah.
What is it? Half the size of the continental United States.
I believe so.
And you got 1,300,000,000 people living there. They can't feed themselves, can't clothe themselves. They have to import, and basically they need land. They got to expand.
Yep.
And they're not going to be able to do it on this side of the world because no one's going to tolerate it. The only options they have is Europe or Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't attack Europe without getting into a war with the United States, but you can attack Russia without getting into a war with the United States.
Yeah, they've got a 5,000-mile border.
So I don't know how. I feel it's just a matter of time, to be honest with you. And maybe 2012 will be the kicker.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that'll give them the kicker to jump. Maybe Russia will become unstable, and China will say, "Well, look, we got to go in and stabilize Russia, guys. So we're sorry." But
that's that domino effect I keep going back to, because you know what? When there's chaos in one part of the world, or when something breaks down, it gives all these other dark schemes a chance to see the light of day. I mean, if China were to march on Russia right now in some fashion where they threatened and they warned and they lined up troops and there was back and forth, the United States and Europe would do whatever it could to calm the situation down and bring them back. There would be a process of diplomacy that more than likely would work. But if all of a sudden the United States and or Europe are plunged into some sort of chaotic situation by natural catastrophe or some other means, and then China moves on Russia, we're not going to have the diplomatic wherewithal, the public will behind us to attend to that situation. When a Katrina-like situation prevails throughout our country or something,
we'll be too busy licking our own wounds.
Yeah,
to lend aid to someone else.
Yeah.
And then that's the truth of the matter. And that's of course you also have the same thing, because India wants Tibet, so China may invade Russia, India may invade China.
Oh, wouldn't that be ducky?
So because they want Tibet, and the Indians already told the Chinese if there's any more attempts on Dalai Lama's life, they'll consider it an act of war.
Oh, wow.
And the United States has been buffing India up for the last decade. We wanted to offset China's economy.
Yeah,
because they were starting to catch up with us, so we buffed up India, which really hurt China's economy again. And but someone told me the other day, we got to worry about China passing this up. I said, China made $2 trillion last year. The United States made $13 trillion. And we're forecast to make $20 trillion this year. I said, China is nowhere near catching us, guys. Just so y'all know that's just one of them political things you hear that want to make people crazy. But if you go look at the numbers, you'll see they're not even catching up with Russia yet.
Good.
They just got a long ways to go, and they're like 11 or something. And with us beefing up India and outsourcing to them, we're effectively building India to keep an eye on China. Is what we're doing. so we don't have to. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, if you get this 2012 event and Russia collapses and China decides to take advantage of it because we're too busy doing something else, India may feel, well, you know what? They're occupied fighting Russia. We'll just take Tibet. And then now you got a big disaster going on in half the planet that, you're not only licking your own wounds, but you got to keep an eye on all of this because you know this is going to snowball into something bad. And they all got nukes now. It's not like the old days when they didn't have nukes. They all got nukes. I mean, they ain't got a lot of nukes, but, I think there's 800 nukes between India and China, but that's plenty enough to...
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah, that's plenty enough to wreak havoc on the planet. So, yeah, you're right. You're going to have to worry about the dominoes effect and not so much in the United States. I don't think like Canada or Mexico is going to try to invade the United States, but or vice versa. We may, well, you know what though, Larry? We may try to annex Canada and Mexico.
Well, Henry Clay said 40 Kentucky riflemen could take the whole thing about Canada.
Oh yeah, I could send my 2 chihuahuas up there. They could take Canada.
But the Canadians politely disagree.
Yeah, they politely disagree because they know what'll happen. They don't have no army. Oh, that's just funny. But that would be a good start to one world government. If the United States would just go ahead and guess with Canada and Mexico and say, look, guys, we're just going to annex y'all. I mean, we're one country basically anyway. You can't survive. Y'all using our electricity, watching our TV, using our resources. You might as well just become part of the country.
Well, Lou Dobbs of CNN would argue that we've already taken that step with the North American Union.
Yeah, we have. You've got, and then there's that. What was that deal we did with the South Americans where there's something we cut where that we limited all the South Americans' army sizes, and we also they're not protectorates per se, but they're real close to being protectorates.
Interesting.
And a lot of the countries, and I think there's only you got Cuba and where's Chavez out of
Venezuela.
That's really the only 2 spots that are even a bother for the United States on this side of the world, and really they're both only the size of a hole in a wall. So we're not real worried about them. But eventually we'll go do something about Venezuela. Cuba, I figure, will fix itself. Eventually, Cuba's just going to become part of Florida. It's when they get a free leader over there, we'll just do like we did with Puerto Rico and make them a commonwealth. That's what's going to happen there. But so basically, this side of the world pretty much flies under one banner. It's the other side of the world you have to worry about. You don't have to really worry about Europe so much, but you got to worry about the Middle East, and you got to worry about China and Russia, places like that, the Far East, and it's like the thing with Taiwan. That I'm surprised Taiwan hasn't started World War III or triggered 2012.
I know.
Because Chinese want Taiwan so bad they can taste it. And the U.S. is like, there is no way we're going to let you have Taiwan. I mean, we keep half a dozen Aegis cruisers parked in the channel between them, loaded down with nukes. We're like, just try, guys, please. I don't get it. Maybe they should say, okay, look, China, we'll give you Taiwan, you give India Tibet, and everybody will be happy. We'll split.
China would take it in a minute.
Oh yeah, they would. They would make out way better on it. Because Tibet, what is it? Mountain range? Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the country. It makes up a third of China, by the way. It's a huge part. Tibet is actually a huge part of China, but it's not anything that can really be used for anything.
No, it's magnificent and it's spiritual. But
oh yeah, it's a beautiful place, but I mean, it's not. You're not going to go up and grow massive crops or raise, lots of farm animals and stuff like that. It's just not that kind of area. And I guess India just wants it because it belongs to the Dalai Lama. It amazes me how India has taken the Dalai Lama, and just immersed them into their culture.
Yeah.
It amazes me. I mean, a full third of the Indians now follow him around. I'm like, how in the hell would that happen?
Well, he's quite he's quite a figure.
Yeah, yes, he is. Now, that's somebody I'd like to be able to ask about 2012, what he thinks about it.
Me too. I've shaken his hand, but not that he would remember,
Yeah.
And I never got to ask. But for example, one of the arguments against 2012 is there's no Tibetan prophecy that points to that date, and there are people who have phonied up ancient Tibetan prophecies to make them work out to the year 2012 as the end time or whatever, and it's baloney. And in my book, I investigated that. But you get kind of crazy. If you want to make an argument, you kind of look for corroborating evidence and say, oh wow, here Tibetan philosophy says 2012, and it didn't take but about an hour to break that down and see that it wasn't phony.
Yeah. I Tell you what, I know we're getting close to break, so we're going to grab Instant Karma's question since he's been patiently waiting up there, jumping up and down there. Instant, why don't you come on, man? Give us your first name and location, and you're live on there with Larry.
All right, thanks, Joe. Yeah, I'm Jason, and I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere in Texas right now. Interesting program you got here, and in particular, one of the lines of research that I've been going with is taking quite a look in 2012. And Larry, you alluded to it earlier, like some of the media perception that's going on in 2012. And one of the things I wanted to point out was, you know, just here in Linwood, you know, a couple of days ago, on Martin Luther King Day, I turned on the History Channel, and the plans are lined up. They don't have anything about Dr. King. They don't have anything about the civil rights movement. They turn on the History Channel, and basically the first program that they run is a lot of the prophecies, you know, Moses, Ryan, I don't know if they mentioned some of the Egyptology, but that's one of the things that they look into that somewhat tells that. Yeah, they basically have a thing about all of the 2012 prophecies. The program immediately after that was you know, the top 10 things that could wipe humanity out and ways we can all die. You know, everything from global warming to us losing ourselves to, you know, that big rock from outer space that caused an extinction of the Earth, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then the program immediately following that one was, you know, what would happen to the world and all of our structures of humanity this time. Which I found that just kind of interesting, and I've noticed in particular, I want to call it in the last couple of years, I don't know, the whole 2012 thing seems to have kind of taken up a life of its own. I mean, used to just be, you know, something that would be discussed, you know, dark hours and, you know, paranormal chat rooms, somewhat like on the internet right now. But I don't know, the mainstream media seems to be getting on the bandwagon extremely heavily about it, you know. And they almost look at it in an extremely apocalyptic light. There's like nothing biblical about it. You know, basically, we're all going to die. I mean, I know you've noticed that, and if you have any more thoughts on it, I'd like to hear that. And another thing that I've been wondering about the entire 2012 thing is it seems like, again, all of the, you know, various ways for us to die, and, you know, various apocalyptic end time kind of things. I don't know. I've noticed that those things sort of worked up around the millennium, you know, all the purveyors of those things are kind of pushing those, and they seem to be even more on the bandwagon for 2012. I don't know. I'd just like to get a little bit more of their opinion on that. I don't know, especially the I call it media saturation that's been going on lately. And it almost always looks at it from a completely, totally negative light.
Well, I think that it's true. I can just see the growth since I started researching the topic in 2004. You know, just in sheer numbers of on the web and showings of that documentary, and I've had, I don't know, 4 or 5 film crews at my house. You know, it just keeps going. I think Alan Weissman's recent book, The World Without Us, has, which is an excellent book, has also prompted that sort of imagination. I have to say that his book is not nearly as gratuitously pessimistic as a lot of the interpretations of it, or free associations on riffs on the idea that the media has done are. But in defense of their catastrophic interpretations, I find myself having to. I do that too. It's scary, and like we were talking about earlier in the show, the timelines are such that that's what's the scary part. It may be that 2012 signals the dawn of something great and wonderful and an enlightened age and a way out of many of the messes that we're in by our own creation or otherwise. But how long is is it going to hurt? And I know, I mean, I have young kids, and it has made me, like, as is the case with so many other parents, really conservative. That doesn't mean right wing or left wing, but it means conservative. It means no, protect. Something's bad coming. You know, it brings you down to a very primitive level of security, and I imagine that the first blush of reaction that people would have when they hear about the potential for 2012 to be a terrible, wonderful, dramatic year is fear. And the media is responding. That's not to say that as we progress towards 2012, there might not be a rapid development towards the more nuanced and balanced and thoughtful kind of coverage that I think you, Jason, are waiting for.
I don't know. Hey, now, here's another one for y'all guys. I was talking with a group the other day, and they said, well, what happened if we had alien visitation in 2012 on the winter solstice? So that would trigger the golden age without any disasters at all. I don't know if they, I don't exactly know how they come to that conclusion, because personally, I don't know if the whole planet is ready for, to accept the fact that there may be something out there other than us.
No, but I'll tell you, if I had a choice, I'd take a couple of aliens dropping by.
Oh yeah, so would I. See and that's the thing, you know. When we talk about this, I guess that's the hardest part, is to really find out what this literal translation is. I mean, is it stretching us out, or is it just going to be a flip flop? All of a sudden, something's going to happen, and everybody. You know, I had some of the groups out of Sedona, Arizona, tell me, well, no, it's just going to be a consciousness change overnight. I said, what do you mean? I said, one morning we're going to go to bed 6 billion of us, and the next day we're going to get up and we're going to all have a basic consciousness shift. I said, I guess that's possible. I'm not exactly sure how it's possible, but not without an event. You know, I can't see humanity changing its ways without something pushing it in that direction, I guess.
No, I agree with that. I did ask Gerardo Barrios, one of the two Mayan shamans that I worked with in Guatemala, about what 12/21/12, what that day would be like. Because I've tended not to focus so much on that date as the great off switch in the sky being flipped, but it is the specific date on which the Mayan calendar, as interpolated into our calendar, runs out. And he said something that was very poetic. He said, it'll be the moment when you realize that twilight has deepened into night, and that you've entered a darkness that you know the light will come again, but you're just, in this case, just won't be sure how long it'll take. Yeah. And I thought that was, you know, he didn't come up with a laundry list of, you know, Everest will explode and the Atlantic will boil, that sort of thing. But it speaks to a shared awareness. I try to avoid the word consciousness just because I honestly don't really know what it means.
Yeah, I don't either.
But you know, that's me.
Well, no,
Joe.
When you start dealing with the New Age, you gotta be careful, because some of these terms that they were talking to me a couple weeks ago. I'm like, what? I said, y'all are all crazy. Y'all know that, right? I get emails all the time about that. I got a lot of New Age friends, but I'm not a New Ager per se. I give them a hard time. But guys and girls, we got to go take a break, so I want everyone to please stay tuned to UFO Undercover. I'm your host, Joe Montaldo. I'm sitting and speaking with Larry Joseph, and we'll be back in about 7 minutes. We clear.
Joe.
Yeah.
How long you need?
Prepare yourself for an evening filled with paranormal, special guests, interviews, haunting stories, creatures of the unknown, and tales that will chill you to the bone. Brought to you by the UPRN Network and Pittsburgh Paranormal Society. Take a walk into the night with Sean Kelly.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Into the Night. My name is Sean Kelly, and I'll be your host for the show. So how's everybody doing tonight? We had an awesome show on Chasing Prophecy. and we talked a little bit about stuff like fairies and the black eye, thinking it's Illuminati or something like that, and it was just a good show. And but before I go on, I want to thank UPRN 105.3 New Orleans for doing my show into the night. Now, my guest, she canceled tonight, and she had some business, personal business to take care of. So it's going to be whatever comes out of my mouth, but that's okay. But I do want to get to, like I usually do at the beginning of the show, about mental illness. And this is a bad time of the year for a lot of people who are depressed, who have anxiety, who's just not.
Operating from a higher frequency could become light beings? Question mark, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I had a dream about meeting one of those light beings one time.
Right.
Did you?
That was, oof.
Was it a dream or maybe it was an experience?
Yes.
Well,
Kathy.
I don't know.
Yes. Kathy says they went forth and multiplied.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's continue on.
Okay. Now, is all this possible? I think so.
Yes.
And I think that we could be designed through DNA. Either somebody messed with our DNA or through procreation inserted their DNA into ours, and through our children, we became a new race.
I agree. Maybe that's where the Rh negative blood type comes from.
Maybe.
Blue eyes, green eyes, hazel eyes.
Hazel, really? You
not
think
brown
it really
eyes, which
does
was
fit in there?
the norm. Pardon?
You really think hazel fits in there? Hazel has every damn color in it.
Yeah,
It
but
has
it's just a
some
mix. But the
brown.
point is original eye color was brown.
I'm just curious. I'm
Rh
asking
positive.
you. Yeah.
So that lends to Tom's theory because no one can trace it.
Yes.
Right.
I'm asking because I'm curious myself, because I'm not making a statement. I'm actually very curious.
I'm still reeling at the thought of going out and mating with everything in sight. That must have been an interesting time. That's all I can say.
I'm sure it would have been.
But it was a different. Are we talking Woodstock or are we talking?
Yes.
Well, we're probably talking something similar to it.
Because I think it's very close.
Yeah.
I wonder how many species came out of that festival.
All right, next on the list.
Okay. Now, were we created through intermingling? I think we were. Was it God, or was it someone else, or something else, or some other events? But I think that we have to consider everything if we're going to be looking at human history. It all has to be on the table.
Right.
Okay. Scenario number 3. We were here first. Now, one of the things I did in my books, they are here, is I looked at things like, well, let me stop there. I was looking for a reason why there were so many sightings in places. So what I did was I looked at everything that I could think of, such as visual reports, sightings, overlaps, the indigenous people and their stories of their gods and creators, their ancestors told them, rock painting, earthquakes, weather, pollution, CO2, power plants. I looked at everything I could possibly think of to try to explain why these UFOs were here.
Okay.
Okay, I looked at them.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I looked at was Native Americans. And that was what I termed the mother lode.
Okay. And why would that be?
That is because, first of all, they had little or no written language. They didn't write things down.
Oh,
They related stories to each other.
oral history. Yes.
Yep. And if they did anything with a pen or something similar to a pen, like charcoal, they did pictorials, draw little pictures. Now, what if they're ancient myths that they've passed on? What if it's direct history? And I came across, when I was looking at the Native Americans, I came across the Algonquin tribe.
Yes.
How the Algonquin tribe lived along the Atlantic Ocean
Mhm.
in the area of northern northern North America,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, they come
they
right up into Canada.
yep,
Yep.
and they created. Excuse me, they didn't. They set down a prophecy that was to be passed on to all of the descendants of their tribe. Um, and that was called the Seven Fires prophecy.
Okay.
Let me go through that prophecy.
Yes,
The
please.
first fire, again, a fire is something that's life giving to all of the Native Americans. They wouldn't be able to survive without fire.
Hmm.
Now, these big events, they called them fires. They would leave their homes by the sea and follow the sign of the Megis. Now, what the heck's a Megis?
Hmm.
A Megis is a human skin colored fish.
Really?
Yeah. So they thought they were fish because they came out of the water. And look, they also had human skin.
Hmm.
So what the heck were they? Well, I'm going to get into that in a little bit. The second fire, and again, this was passed down by these Megis to the Native Americans, and they told the stories. Um, the second fire was dreams of a little boy would point the way back to the true path. So basically saying, you're going to lose your way, but just be aware that the little boy is going to point his way back. The third fire, they would find a path to the lands prepared for them. And they will continue their journey west to the place where food grows upon the water.
Hmm.
That was their description. What they did was they traveled down the St. Lawrence Seaway across northern northern Great Lakes and settled in the land of northern Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
Hmm.
And Minnesota, especially, a land of 1,000 lakes. Believe me, there's really 1,000 of them there. It's unbelievable. But food does grow upon the water, and they would have plenty to eat when they got there.
Hmm.
The fourth fire, expect a race of people who had light skin. Well, that sure happened.
Hmm.
Number two, the light skin race might wear the face of death that would almost look the same as a face of brotherhood. We're here for you guys. Well, they weren't. And you shall recognize the face of death if the rivers are poisoned and the fish are unfit to eat.
Hmm.
Sound familiar?
Sure does.
Yeah. Okay. The fifth fire. As this fire loses its heat, there will come among the people those who promise great joy and salvation.
Yep.
That great joy and salvation, well, that was the white man's God, wasn't it?
Sounds a little bit like religion.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And they said that you will struggle for many generations. And
Which
this
happened.
promise is false, and it will nearly destroy those who accept it.
Yeah. There we go.
The sixth fire. Remember, I said this is a seven fires prophecy. The
Mhm.
sixth fire is the promise accepted during the fifth fire was false. Those who were deceived by this promise will take their children away from the teachings of the elders. The elders will lose their purpose in life, and many will become sick and die. Well,
Yep.
that happened. And
Yes, it
many
did.
people will be out of balance, and the cup of life will become the cup of grief.
Yes. Yes.
The seventh fire. This is a little bit long, so I'll paraphrase here.
Okay.
The stories that had been lost, that were told and passed down, the Native American elders no longer were able to tell the stories because the youngsters were pulled away from the teachings of the elders.
Mhm.
Many of the elders will point in the wrong direction. Others will remain silent because of their fear. And some of the elders will be silent because no one has asked them for their wisdom in such a long time.
Mhm.
That's the seventh fire.
Mhm.
Now, the seventh to the eighth, the light-skinned people will be given the choice between two paths. If they choose the right path, the seventh path will light the eighth fire and final fire of brotherhood and sisterhood. It will all become clear, and everything will be wonderful from here on.
Do they give a timeline for that?
No,
Dang it.
the wrong decision will create a great reset.
Oh, there's the word.
That's the
Yeah.
great reset. That's exactly the buzzwords that are being thrown around right now.
Yeah, we are
Um,
split right now between the two, and
Right.
how we choose makes all the difference.
Kathy says, funny you should mention there's lots of sightings and strange activities in the skies in Algonquin Park over the past summer. Yeah, I have a family member's got land up there, like really close.
Sure.
And it's definitely a bit of a hot spot, so to speak. So, yes, I do believe that the indigenous people had very close relationships with extraterrestrials. And I
Yes,
believe that,
they did and still do.
yes, just like the
Um,
Hopi, right? They were also given
yeah.
prophecies.
In my second book, I interviewed a young girl who was part of the Algonquin tribe, and they are the I'm trying to figure the name of them. They were the I've drawn a blank, but it'll come to me in a few
That's
seconds.
okay.
Yeah.
Just blurt it out whenever it gets there.
Okay. And
Yes.
she told stories about what she was told as she was growing up.
Right.
Oh, here it is. They were the Algonquin that moved over into the Midwest. They renamed themselves the Ojibwe.
Yes. That's
Okay.
right. We have a Ojibwe up here as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the it was found out that the stories that the Native Americans were telling were exactly the same stories that they were telling in the various parts of the world, like in Iran and Iraq. The Sumerians referred to fish-like men who
Yes.
came out of the water and taught them. The Dogon tribe in North
Yes.
Africa, master of waters, they referred to. The
Yes.
Hindu, they said the people appeared to them in the form of a fish. I don't think they were actually fish. I think because they came out of the water, the people who saw them figured they must be fish.
Mhm.
Okay. The Anishinaabe, this is what the Ojibwe called themselves. They referred to the Megis as human skin colored fish.
Doreen in chat is Ojibwe, so welcome.
So they also referred to iridescent people. These
Yes.
iridescent people in Sumerian lore, People mined for gold, and they were called the Shining Ones.
Yes.
In Dogon, they were said to be called that they were glowing bright. The Hindu, golden in color. The Anishinaabe, radiant and iridescent. The Sioux, golden eagle and golden feathers. The Natchez tribe. Now, there are two groups of this Natchez tribe. The first group, they reminded everybody who saw them as the standard Native Americans from back in the 1800s. They're 5'6" average height, dressed just like the other tribes with their own tribal differences. And the other group of them were 7-footers that glowed bright. Where the hell did they come from?
Yeah.
Okay. So
big connections. Yeah.
So there's also references to 7 gods.
Yes.
The Sumerian talked about 7 sages. A Dogon, 7 amphibious creatures. The Hindu, 7 great sages, and referred to each one of them as being one of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. The Anishinaabe, 7 Magus. The Sioux, 7 gods, 7 fireplaces, 7 council fire. The number 7 over and over and over again.
And interestingly enough, even religion looks at 7 as a sacred number. So
now, in these various places where these people wrote or talked or drew pictures about or however they documented their information, all came from the time of immediately after the Great Flood, when people came out of their hiding areas and were figuring out how to live again. In Samaria, about 4000 BC. Dogon, Africa, 4000 BC. In India, 4000 BC. Anishinaabe, 4000 BC. Sioux, 4000 BC. They all happened in and around the same time. Now, how did that happen? If after the Great Flood, the best people could do is maybe scare up a horse.
True enough.
Right?
True enough.
I mean,
True enough.
How did this happen across the whole world?
And don't know, but we're going to come right back to that. We have to do a station and sponsor ID.
We definitely do.
Steady, please. Okay.
Thank you. You are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and myself, Amelia Pisano. Tonight's amazing guest, returning guest, is Tom Conwell. We are broadcasting to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 FM radio, on United Paranormal Radio, right? I can't even see. This is crazy. International Public Radio. And all of our Facebook pages right now. Our amazing intro and outro and that fabulous voice that you hear is courtesy of Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon. He is an award-winning composer. And you can find him on Bandcamp and Amazon. Check out his music. It's phenomenal. It's original. It's unique. I know you'll love it, especially if you love our songs before and after. We also like to thank Folgers from the first day to, we hope, the end. Thank you, Folgers. We love you. We appreciate your support. And we're back.
We are back. Stage is yours, Tom.
My favorite word.
There we go.
Right. By the way, I know we're not going to complete this. I'm about halfway through.
Okay, you still have time.
I need a part 3.
You've got about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Awakening.
Right.
I believe that the awakening is the 8th fire. I believe they're one and the same.
Okay.
And this is coming. Everybody is in the process of awakening. Will it actually happen? I don't know. It depends on what choices we make as a human race. But I think that things are happening.
Absolutely. I would agree with you.
And telepathy is going to become the new norm.
Oh, that's going to cause a lot of family feuds.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
picture Thanksgiving with that one.
Oh my.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And are there specific signs for awakening that people should be looking for? Or is this going to be different for everyone?
Well, it's going to vary for a lot of people.
Mhm.
I think that they're going to see things like time prompts,
Hmm.
looking at the clock and always seeing 11:11 or
For example, yeah.
12:12 or that
So it's like
kind of stuff.
evolving, basically,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
High frequencies, vibrations, things like that.
I think people are going to start having significant dreams,
Mm.
and these dreams are going to come true, where they're going to be able to create their own realities.
Mm. Yes.
Um, um, at this point, I would like recommend people look up awakening and query YouTube, because there's 50 different YouTube videos on how to tell if you're in the process of awakening, or if you're a star child, or if you're there's a
Right.
whole bunch of things like that. And I would recommend you go to that, because that's an entire talk unto itself.
It is. It is. And we can do that sometime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
So anyhow, your life will never be the same if you have a major experience in the realm of seeing a ghost, having a vision, seeing a UFO, or something along these lines. Things are going to change for you as a person. That's going to be, for me, that was my first step.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Others may have other things happen first, but this is going to happen. This is going to be one of your steps where all this stuff is going to become apparent to you.
Hmm.
What you do with it, these ascension symptoms, first of all, they're going to be mentally painful. But what you do with it, that's what's important. And you're also going to be probably struggling with, what is God? Is it spiritual? Are you spiritual? Do you need to be spiritual? You're going to have that struggle too.
It's every day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Especially in this field, it's every day.
Because there is a difference if people have a hard time separating. There's a difference between religion and spirituality.
Oh yeah.
And not always one of the same for people,
Oh no.
unfortunately.
No.
No,
And you
they're
could
not.
still pray and not be religious.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Roman Catholic, and all the Catholics listening, do not email me. But you can pray without being religious. Prayer is not always written. Sometimes it's supposed to be a conversation with God if you believe in God. So
Very
Stage
true.
is yours. Go ahead.
Very true. I was raised Roman Catholic myself, and I don't even go to church anymore because I think it's just a bunch of
I'm a recovering Roman Catholic, is what I usually say.
recovery. There you go.
I am spiritual, though. I am. I believe in.
I wasn't for a lot of years,
Yeah.
but I am now. Believe me, after things started happening to me, oh boy. Yeah.
It's a much bigger picture. You believe in a creator. You believe in the universe. You just
Yeah.
believe there's more. You know it's something. I just not a fan of the fan club.
It can't be all that they're saying, because they're all saying it differently as well.
Exactly.
So
Okay. So after awakening and how it's different for everybody, next.
Okay. What would happen if we attracted them? That's the reason that they're here. Let's just say they were never here and we evolved. Okay, let's just say that. And I have to look at all the different scenarios. Let's just say that we attracted them recently. How could that have happened? Well, back in the 1910s, we invented radio, And since then, that radio signal has been going out into the cosmos at the speed of light in every direction.
And what about, the atomic bomb?
Well, I
Like,
haven't
because
gotten to
that
that.
ripple effect, I'm sure it attracted somebody.
You betcha. Um, uh, the fact that we were at war, once they finally got somebody's attention, all of a sudden we're fighting with each other. I'm sure that didn't make anybody happy, because if we're fighting with each other, what are we going to do when we advance to meeting them? Are we
Mhm.
going to pick fights with them? They were really worried. And then we lit off nuclear weapons and the electromagnetic nuclear weapon signature that went out at the speed of light everywhere. That
Mhm.
wasn't good.
Mhm. I
Our
agree.
physical constructs of power plants, using nuclear fuel, we're
We're causing
venturing
a
into.
disturbance in the forest is what you're saying. Like
Yeah,
ripple
well, yeah,
effects.
sure.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that.
And what are we doing to our own planet?
Yeah. And our
We're,
own people.
we're polluting the crap out of it.
Yes.
So,
We're killing
anyhow,
it.
yeah. Now, we have nuked people from our own planet.
Hmm.
That can't make them very happy. What are we going to do when people look different than us?
We
Yeah,
can't even get along with each other, let
I know.
alone something otherworldly.
I know.
Mm.
That has got to be interesting them, and they have got to know. They have to figure out what we're up to.
Do
They
you think it's a
have to.
big social experiment? Maybe that
Well,
they're seeing what we're going to do.
it could be an experiment.
That's going back to the whole overseer sort of mentality of something
Yes.
else being
Yep.
up there manipulating. Mm.
Now, what's the upside with us? First of all, only some on our planet have ascended, and
Mm.
more ascensions are happening daily.
Yes.
We are a handful, but we're redeemable. And our ancestors make us a promising lot, especially the ancestors of the Native Americans.
Mm.
If we attracted them, you can forget about all the stuff that's out there. Rock art, Old Testament, ancient Morse. What we do now is what matters. We have to prove ourselves right now.
Hmm.
We have to stop the war. We have to stop the anger, and we have to get along with each other and make it look like we're trying.
Hmm.
That's the only way, because if they show their face, they're just going to end up super pissed.
Hmm.
And we don't want that, especially if they're a million years advanced from us. That wouldn't end up well for us. So
Right.
there's another scenario, and someone asked a question before, similar to what I'm going to talk about here. What
Okay.
about ancient writings and megastructures?
Right.
Were these things part of a legacy left for us to discover, such as Bible stories, mostly from the books of the Old Testament,
Hmm.
or the writings of the Vedic scripts written in Sanskrit from India, the
Hmm.
Bhagavad Gita, Book 6 of the Mahabharata,
Hmm.
passed down stories from the Native Americans.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
they all relate to nice stories of us, of them um, seeing us do nice things. Okay,
Mm.
these are really important. The ancient writings, they're they're um, they're stories on how to do things.
Mm.
Now,
A guideline, maybe.
a guideline. Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
Now, what about the megastructures?
Mm.
Who made them? Did we make them?
Hmm.
Were they made for us to show us this is how you do it, guys? What about the pyramids?
Academia would tell you no, but
Yeah.
I think realistically, there's a lot of signs that lean to possibly.
Yes. What about the pyramids in Giza?
I've been.
Angkor Wat, the Cambodia temple.
Yes.
Machu Picchu, the Andes Mountains of Peru.
Yes.
Teotihuacan, northeast of Mexico City.
Mhm.
There's those low flat pyramids. The
Yes.
Nazca lines. What were
Yes.
they up to there?
Yes.
Sacsayhuaman in Cusco, Peru.
Mhm.
Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, Bolivia.
Mhm.
Göbekli Tepe in Sanliurfa, Turkey.
Yes.
Stonehenge and Superhenge in Great Britain.
Power spots.
They're all done as an example of something.
Mhm.
They're to show us something.
I believe that also power spots, portals, vortices,
Could be that all those things that were made were made in those particular spots because that's where they realized that wherever they generated power from, they could transmit it to those particular spots because they were
Yes.
hot spots.
I would agree with you on that. I would. And if there are portals, let's face it, that's where they're coming in and out of as well.
Sure.
I like it. Next.
Okay. Rock painting.
Yeah, yes.
Now, in France, in the limestone caves, the area was kept in perfect condition. Because of the limestone cave, it was kept at exactly the same humidity and exactly the same temperature. And the cave dwellers went in there and drew pictures, and we got a hint about what they did and what they what their life was like. And there weren't many pictures drawn there that gave us the impression that there were extraterrestrials there. But that wasn't the only place that we saw rock painting or anything like it. Deep in the Sierra de San Francisco of Baja, there's a concentration of the world's most extraordinary rock art sites. There's also some in Horseshoe Canyon, Utah, and the Anasazi, the Pueblo people dating between 3,000 and 800 years ago. They drew pictures of things that didn't look human. And I think they were trying to tell us something. They drew what they saw. They were trying to tell us something, but we haven't figured out what it was that they were telling us exactly yet.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's all over the world. It's amazing.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Next.
Okay. What about abductions that are going on?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Now, we can only guess why certain people are picked on for abductions. We don't know exactly, although we can pretty much guess. Is it because of their particular DNA or their lineage? I think the lineage is probably more critical there. I think they were probably able to determine whose lineage is the important ones from previous DNA injections in our ancient past.
Agreed.
Hybridization.
Yes.
I believe that there's a hybridization program.
I believe that
I
too.
don't think that it has anything to do with the fact that the DNA for the aliens is somehow corrupted and they need our DNA to steal. I don't think it has anything to do with it. I think what they're trying to do is get a foothold on our planet by creating people who look similar to us. And that's what they're doing.
But more advanced.
Oh,
I think.
they're
Yeah.
way advanced. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they wouldn't look. They'd be different from us. They'd look different from us, but they'd be close enough that they'd be almost acceptable. And I
Mm.
think that's why. Again, I'm only guessing, but
Mhm.
that's just my guess.
It's a good guess.
Maybe.
I like your
Um,
guess. That's a good
yeah.
guess.
Curiosity.
Okay.
Are they just curious about us? So they steal us and do experiments? I
I
don't
think that
buy
goes
that.
back to Eisenhower and Truman.
Yeah. Yeah, but they allowed them to do that.
Yeah, they
Um,
sold us out.
yeah, but
Right.
they allowed them to do that
Yes.
because they wanted to do that. And they wanted to do that because they had something in mind.
Yes. Agreed.
Yep. Okay, now they have something in mind. Got that. Are they indeed trying to jumpstart our awakening?
Uh-uh. No, that is a good
Is it
concept.
possible? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
I
I could
I
see
had
that.
the opportunity to interview in the area of 30 to 35 people. Some people started their interviews about abductions and chickened out,
Mhm.
and other people allowed me to ask them anything, and they answered.
Mm.
But one of the things that I was able to realize from the questions I was asking is that the people that were abducted were they all considered themselves psychic. And not only that, after they returned, they considered themselves more psychic.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
that's one of the theories. Yeah.
yeah, I've always had that in the back of my mind. Are they diddling with our psychic beings?
Well,
Or
that would be evolving us or
yeah,
waking us up. Yeah.
sure would. Um, are they jump starting our awakening? And back when I was doing the interviews, awakening wasn't even on my radar,
Mhm.
but it became apparent to me during my last book. Um,
Mhm.
so um, something big is going on with what they're planning.
And they just seem to be working with select people. It's not everyone.
Mhm.
So, what is it about those select people or family lines that make them so enticing? Maybe they just evolve quicker.
If speed, that I don't know if that would be it.
Then
Um,
what makes certain bloodlines or lineages so enticing that they follow them for generations?
mhm. Could it be because some of these guys way back in our ancient past who took one for the team and went out and
Multiply this or that.
mated,
Yeah,
um, could could they know who these people are, their lineages, and
maybe.
hone in on them?
Well, one of those people would have been Enoch.
Yes, that would have been one of them. Yeah.
Enoch was one of them.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's documented in the Old Testament. He did go forth and multiply.
Yeah.
And when he was tired, he literally just disappeared.
Hmm. So there's something going on. It's really big, and
Yes,
I don't know where to go with it other than to throw out my theories and let it lie.
I like it though. I like
Um,
it. It's fresh. Okay, next.
okay, and only a few abductees or
Mm.
experiencers truly know what the reason is, and I think many of them they know intuitively what the reason is,
Mm.
but I think they've been told not to tell us yet.
Wow.
And I
Mm.
also think that once they make themselves known, then everything will be known to everybody all at once
Hmm.
because of what
Interesting.
they're capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion.
So, like people, maybe the hybrids,
Yep.
maybe, from the old family lines.
Yep. And I know a few of those people,
Me too.
and they no, and they would not tell me because I started to drill down to the nitty gritty there, and they stopped me at that particular point.
It's funny, yet there are some experiencers who are very vocal about it.
Oh yeah, well they're vocal to a point.
Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating. But it just tells you we're on the cusp of something.
Hmm.
Okay, next.
Okay, new scenario. Sightings everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Since 2001, there have been nearly 175,000 sightings in the U.S.
Wow.
Reported.
Reported sightings, yeah.
Reported. Now, there's probably 1 in 100 go actually reported.
Mm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things being seen up there that that are obviously sightings that people look at and they'll go, nobody will ever believe me, and they keep their mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah,
there's more
that's
people
true.
who don't report it than the
That's right.
reported
Oh,
cases.
I
absolutely.
agree.
Probably tenfold. It's crazy.
More than tenfold,
Yeah,
close to 100-fold.
that makes more sense.
I think it depends on the time too. I think people are more open now with the
Yeah.
internet and disclosure, things like that. Okay,
Mhm.
next.
Okay. Everywhere you look, there are large groupings of sightings.
Mm-hmm.
In some areas have low population compared to cities, but have plenty of sightings.
Mm.
And right here, I have my U.S. map
Okay.
of if you were to look at the last radio event that we had, you'll see my map there, and
Yes.
there's so many unusual areas here that can be commented on that
Mm-hmm.
I just don't even have words for. There's 100 different areas in the United States that I find unusual.
And what would be the most active in your opinion?
The most what?
The most active, the most sightings going by your map.
Oh, most sightings
Yeah.
by the map. It would probably be the Pacific Northwest.
Oh.
As
Any
far
reason
as
why?
an area,
Okay.
and that would be extending from Central Oregon right up north to the Canadian border. There's a mass of things seen in that area.
Do you think it's because of the water?
Well, that's
They
certainly a
could be
part of it.
coming from the water? Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly a very big part of it. Yeah, water plays a big part everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're coming from the water?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's a lot down there.
Now, as far as the most sightings in a particular area, that would probably be Phoenix, perhaps even
Arizona.
the greater Los Angeles area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Arizona's active.
Sometimes I wonder with the greater Los Angeles area, because of their population, you just have more eyes in the sky, kind of sort of.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. But there's an awful lot of things being seen there because right off of the coast is Catalina Island.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of stories about Catalina Island. And directly north of that, there's a huge Air Force base that
That's
is
right.
very popular.
No, that's right. That's right. That's one of the big ones. Okay, next.
Okay. Scenario number 9. UAP.
Ah, yes.
Now, when I was a teenager, it was a lot of years ago, I heard about UFOs.
That's right.
And that was the big deal. Everybody talked about UFOs, unidentified flying object.
Hmm.
Now, in 2017, when they first started to describe the sightings that were done by the Navy pilots, they didn't call them UAP or UFOs. They
Hmm.
called them UAPs.
That's right.
And I often wondered why they would do that.
Hmm.
Why wouldn't they just call them Everybody's familiar with UFO.
Mhm.
Well, first of all, unidentified flying and unidentified aerial
Mhm.
mean pretty much the same thing,
Yes.
right? The real trick comes in when you call it object versus phenomenon.
That's right.
Phenomenon is far more descriptive, okay?
Mhm.
Because what's being seen in the sky are things that change their shape, or things that disappear,
Mhm.
things that grow smaller or grow bigger or split into two. You can't call that an object, okay?
Mhm.
That's really a phenomenon. So UAP is more descriptive. That's one
Yes.
reason, okay? Now, the other reason is when they were trying, they meaning the government, was trying to poo-poo anybody talking about UFOs in the sky as being real, and that includes the entirety of the time from the 40s all the way through the 1990s and early 2000s.
Mm.
They called these people tinfoil hat wearing
That's
wackos,
right.
right? And if all of a sudden they were to say, well, UFOs could come from a different planet, and they said that out loud, they would be all of a sudden lying to all the people that they called tinfoil hat wearing wackos for the past 70 years. Okay? They couldn't do that. So they had to make up a new name. And the new name was a UAP.
Right.
Even
Right.
though it's more descriptive, okay, I get that.
That covers a
But
little bit more of a variety. Right.
they couldn't call it a UFO because by their own um, jumping up and down and screaming at people and telling them that they're idiots or they never saw anything or it's all the planet Venus, they couldn't go against that,
Right.
right? So
Yeah, makes sense.
that's that anyhow. That's
All right.
UFO versus UAP, and that's the reason.
All right. Next.
Okay, the conclusion.
Yes.
Were they here before us?
Yes.
Well, you have to ask the question, before what? Well, before we were a civilization, meaning a recent civilization, before we started writing and drawing. Some of the things that were drawn were something that shouldn't have existed then. Before we were creating inventions. Are they here now? I think a big yes to that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are they doing?
Right.
Why are they backing off from us? What are they waiting for?
Right.
Why wait any longer? What could be next for us?
Mhm.
And in conclusion, our time is here and now. We need to sit up and take notice of all that is going on in our skies, in our history, put it together and talk in realistic terms. They have been here. They are here. They continue to be here because they have a reason to be here. and we've got to come to grips with that.
Agreed. That was a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
You're welcome.
you.
That really was really a great presentation. And I mean, right, almost on the mark too. That was like fantastic. So this is the part of the show, as you know, where you promote yourself, promote your books, tell people how to find you, what you have coming up.
Okay, well, right now I don't have anything planned. It's the winter in upstate New York, and I'm not
Yes.
traveling anywhere.
Nope.
We're not far. We're not far from you, so we
Yeah.
know.
However, I will be looking into doing YouTube events. Maybe I'll write a couple of more presentations like this and do them on YouTube, break them up into mini presentations,
Yes.
and cover a whole bunch of different subjects. So
Excellent.
that's down the road. My books, they are here. Volume 1, East Coast UFOs. Volume 2, Central US. By the way, the one, that particular one, Volume 2, is the one that has the most about the Native Americans and the Seven Fires prophecy. They are
Excellent.
here. Volume 3, Western US, are 3 in a series that go along with the map that I created. And you can get copies of my map from me in a 8.5 by 11 or an 18 by 24.
Mhm.
And the 18 by 24 is very nice. That's a really nice photograph that was done for me. My other 2 books, Going Interstellar, that's a collection of blogs I wrote about the problems that that if we were to go to their planet, the problems we would have to solve and what that would take.
Mhm.
My latest book, Earthquakes and UFOs, I tried to prove that that UFOs were attracted to the major earthquakes.
Mhm.
Um,
So we
and
talked about that on the last segment in
yeah,
last July for those
and,
who were really interested in that.
and all of those books are available from me. If you want, I
Mhm.
can send them to you.
And your
Uh,
website is
well, I don't have a website.
okay. So
My
Facebook, how do they find you?
Facebook's the best way to get in touch with me,
Okay,
because
perfect.
then we can just chat there as much as you want. But my Facebook address is tom.conwell.3.
Okay, perfect. So,
And if you were to get in touch with me, I'll tell you how to pay for that, and we can do lots of different ways. And I'll send the signed copies, or you can get them through Amazon.
excellent. All right.